this point in time, I would like to ask if everyone would please stand and observe a moment of silence to pray for prayer.
We ask that we take a moment of silence that we can be in prayer for Ukraine and Russia.
By all means, yes. Thank you. This time I'll ask the clerk if she'll please call the roll.
Councilmember Knight,
Here.
Blackwell,
Here.
Joyner,
Here.
Walker, Daughtridge,
Here.
Bullock,
He's here, but let's,
and Miller.
okay, we have a quorum. Is there any requests for changes, additions, and/or deletions to the agenda as we read it tonight?
No, Mr. Mayor, but I do want to point out on item 15, I will be recusing myself as an appearance of conflict.
Okay. So noted. Okay, so item number 4 is consideration of the minutes of the regular scheduled committee of the whole meeting, which was held on January 10th of 2022. We had a closed session for personnel, with administration of the oath to Mayor Pro Tem for T.J. Walker. We heard from crime stats anyway, and inventory mapping, focused neighborhoods, and council priority discussion. And then we had minutes of the regular scheduled city council meeting, which was held on February 14th, 2022. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes as written. Motion made by Councilman Joyner, seconded by Councilman Blackwell, I believe. Walker. Is there a need for discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask the clerk if she'll please read the roll. If you'll vote when your name is called.
Councilmember Knight, Blackwell,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Walker, Daughtridge,
Yes. Yes.
and Miller.
Okay, minutes are approved. This time, I will turn the mic over and the meeting over to Mr. Peter Varney, our interim city manager, for his community update.
There's several things to talk about. I have distributed to you a FYI package. Wanted to lift up a few things that are in that package. One is that the city's Department of Energy Resources has been working on a project to install electric vehicle recharging stations, planning to begin with 2 stations, one on the west side of the city and one on the east side of the city, and more specifically thinking about placing those stations, one of them at Westridge Village Shopping Center and the other at maybe Oakwood Shopping Center. But wanted to make you aware of those, and if you have any ideas about other locations for the first 2 stations, be happy to receive those. We're also talking about putting 2 stations, electric vehicle recharging stations at the rest stops on I-95, the northbound and southbound locations at the rest stops. A second thing to mention is that sometime back in June, you had received a petition from the neighborhood presidents asking that we reduce the speed limits throughout the city in the residential streets to from 35 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour. Just wanted to make you aware, and you'll see this in your information, that the staff from the Public Works Department has met with the neighborhood presidents to talk about what can be done and what the processes would be for reducing the speed limits on certain streets to 25 miles an hour. The third thing to mention is that the city is publishing a publication that we call City Beat. It looks like this. And we put it out every 2 weeks. It's by subscription for those people who have access to email. We have something like a little over 2,100 subscribers who receive this every 2 weeks. The last publication that went out, some 39% of the people who received it actually opened it up and hopefully read it and digested it. But just wanted to point that out, that we do this. And really asking if there are any suggestions for improvement as to what we do or how we do it or what the content is in that publication. A couple of other things to announce is that included in this City Beat newsletter is an announcement that there's another recycle day scheduled for the parking lot near the courthouse in Nashville this coming Saturday, March the 5th, beginning at 10 o'clock through 1 o'clock, a time for document shredding, if you have old medicines to dispose of, or any other electronics to dispose of, that's a time and a place to do that. We do that in 3 locations every year. One is at Golden East Mall, one is at the Nash County Courthouse, and another one is in Tarboro. So there's plenty of opportunities for disposing of those things. Another thing to point out is that we have a play coming up this weekend at the Imperial Center Theater called Whistle Down the Wind, and Andrew Lloyd Webber play. Be 3 productions this coming weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and 3 the following weekend, also Friday and Saturday and Sunday for those. Beginning tomorrow for the next couple of days, doing a tree giveaway, been giving away seedling small trees for a number of years. And so that begins at the Business Services Center, which is across Franklin Street from where we are now. Just a reminder that the Braswell Memorial Library 20th anniversary celebration is tomorrow, March 1st at 1 o'clock at the library. We're resuming our energy audits. These are free audits. Residential customers do these audits on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so if you want to schedule an audit, you would call the Energy Resources Department, 467-4800 to schedule that. There's another note in there about the Denton Street pool be undergoing renovations this year, so the pool will be closed this year and hopefully will reopen in May of 2023. We've installed 15 new bus shelters in various locations around the city, so that's an improvement, an upgrade, we think, for the transit passengers here in the city. This week, we celebrated the performance of a number of employees through the city manager's recognition process. But one that I wanted to highlight were 21 employees of the Rocky Mount Fire Department. They responded to a fire that occurred November 1st at 116 Parish Court. It was an apartment building, a 2-story apartment building. The cause of the fire was a kitchen fire that filled the building up with smoke. And the difficulty was that with that fire is that the residents in that building were not able to self-evacuate because of the density of the smoke. Fire crews responded. They were there on scene within 4 minutes, and they mounted ladders at the 2nd-story windows and evacuated 12 residents from the 2nd floor, all safe and sound and without any injury to the residents or to the firefighters for that matter. And so it was a classic scene of, I think, great and outstanding performance by the Rocky Mount Fire Department. So I wanted to lift them up with that. That concludes my part.
Thank you, Mr. Varney. Does anybody have any questions or comments for our manager? Okay, now that brings us to the petitions to be received from the public. The public petitions portion of the city council meeting is an opportunity for public comment. And the city council appreciates your attendance and thanks you for expressing your views and opinions. The city council values all citizen input. This is an opportunity to raise a question or present a request to the council. However, in most cases, council members will not respond to public comments, but may refer a matter to the city manager or staff for follow-up. Time will be monitored in order to give everyone an opportunity to speak, and speakers will have 3 minutes. Please be aware that sign-in sheets must be presented to the security officer prior to the opening of the city council meeting. And if an organized group is here to speak on a common issue, please designate one person to present the group's comments. If your comments are in regard to an item that is the subject of a public hearing, please wait until that item is introduced to speak. Time will also be monitored. If your comments are in regard to an evidentiary hearing, additional time may be granted. The city council requests you please adhere to the following guidelines. Complete a sign-in sheet, address comments to the council as a whole and not to individual council members or city staff. Speak from the podium in a civil, non-argumentative, and respectful manner. Personal attacks which have the potential to disrupt the meeting will not be tolerated and will be asked to sit down or removed from the meeting. Keep comments to 3 minutes. Thank you. This time, I'd like to ask Ms. Emily Lemus to the podium. Well, you know, I know, and I know you, that makes it
Right.
worse.
I'm not, well, no, I took it a little personal. It's all right. Good afternoon. My name is Emily Lemus. I'm the executive director of My Sister's House. We are the domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking service provider for Nash and Edgecombe counties. I want to begin by thanking the mayor and this council for their continued support over the years. And I wanted to personally thank Mr. Varney and Ms. McGee for their patience with me. I've sent them many emails over the years for CDBG funding and other grant opportunities. So I appreciate that tech support and support from the city. Last year, My Sister's House celebrated its 40th anniversary of service to Nash and Edgecombe counties. We have offices in the county seats of Nashville and Tarboro, and we operate a 16-bed shelter in Rocky Mount. In 2020, we sheltered 130 people. I say people because My Sister's House offers full services to men, women, and children. We provided 2,622 emergency sheltered nights, 7,866 meals, and with that meal count, we have provided more than 100,000 meals in our 40 years of service to the people of Rocky Mount. Beyond shelter, the agency answered 598 crisis calls through our 24-hour crisis line. Last year, that's an increase of 39% from the previous year. My Sister's House also provided court accompaniment. We go to civil court in Nashville and Tarboro and a criminal court in Rocky Mount 808 times. That's an increase of 59% from the previous year. And so I just wanted to remind the public that My Sister's House, we're still here to help. We're still here to listen. We're still here to believe and to reach out if you need services. I wanted to invite the council and the public to attend our upcoming masquerade ball titled Unmasking Domestic Violence on March 26th at the Mac Haven in downtown Rocky Mount. This is a delayed celebration of our 40th anniversary. If you'd like more information about that or tickets, that can be found on our Facebook page, My Sister's House of North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you. This time, I'd like to invite Crystal Weems Anderson to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Crystal Weems Anderson, and I'd like to thank the council, the mayor for having me this evening. And I just wanted to come up and ask that the council look into just revising the administrative policy. There's a policy number XI.1, and in that policy, it was written actually about 23 years ago, on 9/14/98. And there's a stipulation in section 5.2, where it says that a person may only serve on one board or one commission at a time. And I was just, maybe the council can consider, revising it, because that might actually be preventing some of the appointments from being fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you. This time, I'd like to ask Ms. Brenda Cooper to the podium.
Good evening. I'm Brenda Cooper. I'm from South Rocky Mount. I guess you see me now sometime. But I just have a couple of things I would like to point out that we have concerns about in our communities. I know before it had been talked about with speed bumps because of vehicles running so fast down the streets. And we have some serious issues about that because they continue to fly down these short streets as if they're on a speedway. And we are hearing this day and night. So please, if you can maybe put some speed bumps on these short streets, it would be greatly appreciated and helpful. And because of the seasons changing, children are going to be more out soon, and it's going to be very dangerous for them. Also, our concern is continually about the properties that's in the area that's dilapidated, looks bad, it's going down, and it seems like nobody's paying attention to them. One specific is on Davis Street, and another one where they got quite a few. In fact, I have quite a few on my phone now. I took pictures of. And that certain landlords continue to ignore the need to bring their houses into a decent look and proper code and continue to put people in them and don't seem to care about their conditions of life. And the last thing is about vehicles sitting inside the streets that's been broken down for months and months and months, and they still sit there, really impeding traffic in many places. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Joyner.
Could we, I know we have talked about the cars, and I know that there was something that the code violation on cars was a little bit different than what we thought, and some process about the codes about code violation with homes that is an eyesore to the community. Could City manager sort of.
We've got an item on at the end of the agenda where we're going to have code enforcement personnel come and talk a little bit about the process for enforcing community codes, both housing and other parts of the community code. So if it's okay to talk about that then.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you. I'd like to invite Mr. Samuel Battle to the podium.
Good evening. I just want to thank the inspection department coming over there to Edgecombe County, getting the bin store up and running for Edgecombe County. They had a great turnout. Had over 300 people standing out there waiting to get in the store. And this is a good thing. Crystal was over there supporting it. Bronson supported. I would like to see other people support. We had all types of races over there, having a good time digging and stuff, and they was talking, and they was acting like adults. They didn't use the other term of the words, but they love it. You know, the best day is on Saturday. You'll see people standing out there ready to go in there and shop. Another thing, oh boy, it's just when I hear that when we had to stand up and pray for Russia and Ukraine, yeah, I'm sorry what's going over there with those people, but we got a war in Rocky Mount. We got people dying over here. I ain't never heard nobody get up and pray about the people that's dying in Rocky Mount. But we all over there and in the other countries, on islands and everything praying, but we ain't praying for nobody in this city that's dying for overdose on drugs, gun violence, or nothing. You know, it's just sad that we all in other countries and supporting and everything else like that, and we got a war in our own backyard. And it's amazing to hear y'all pray about that. And I just want to know, in the last 10 years, how much your attorney got paid in the last 10 years, how much you have charged the city in the last 10 years in the city. I really want to see that paperwork, because I feel like that something could be wrong, but I'm saying I just want to see how much you was charging the city on stuff. And when we come up here and talk about stuff in the city, y'all don't never give us an answer back. Y'all just sit there and say, okay, please give us an answer back. Talk to us. You know what I'm saying? Let us know what's going on. We need to know that right now. You know, not next week, the week after. Talk to us now. You know, these secret meetings y'all doing and stuff like that. On your watch, on the attorney watch, is it illegal? Illegal? What is it? You don't never talk about none of that. You ain't saying it's good, it ain't good. You know, but the city is paying you, the taxpayers paying you, sit up there and look out for the city. You know, we go at this side of the people, we go at that side of the people, but at the end of the day, you got to look out for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Battle. Okay, with that said, moving on to item number 7 on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. I'm assuming everybody's had a chance to read the consent agenda, and I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, which is inclusive of approval of tax releases and issuance and renewal of taxi rights as recommended, and authorize city clerk to execute taxi right on behalf of the city.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Blackwell, seconded by Councilman Joyner. Is there a need for discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask the clerk if she'll please call the roll. If you'll vote when your name is called.
Councilmember Knight, Blackwell,
Yes.
Joyner.
Yes.
Walker. Daughtridge.
Yes.
Bullock. And Miller.
Yes.
Consent agenda is approved. Item number 8 on our agenda is consideration of submission of site and program identification grant request to the Golden Leaf Foundation for the identification, design, and development of industrial sites. No matching funds are required. Requesting that we authorize staff to submit the grant request and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute required documentation and certifications, including grant application and subsequent grant agreement. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilperson Miller, second by Councilman Joyner. Is there a need for discussion?
Let me just point out one thing. We're planning, this talks about making the request for Edgecombe side properties, planning on also making the request on the Nash side as well.
Thank you for that clarification. Is there any additional discussion or comment? Hearing none, I'll ask the clerk if she'll please call the roll. You'll vote when your name is called.
Councilmember Knight, Blackwell,
Yes.
Joyner.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Daughtridge.
Yes.
Bullock.
Yes.
And Miller.
Yes.
Item 8 passes. Item number 9 is consideration of the fiscal year 2022 certifications and assurances required by the Federal Transit Administration for transit grants. This ensures the city will comply with all regulations for any federal dollars allocated, which are $1,547,247. Requested action is that we approve certifications and assurances and special section warranty and authorize city manager, city attorney to execute the required documentation on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Miller. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Joyner. Is there a need for discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask City Clerk if you'll please call the roll. If you'll vote when your name has been called.
Councilmember Knight,
Yes.
Blackwell,
Yes.
Joyner.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Daughtridge.
Yes.
Bullock.
Yes.
And Miller.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 10 is consideration of the local government grant agreement, disbursement request, and certification form and company performance agreement relative to one North Carolina grant for Hubble Power System. Project Fusion 2 provides additional funding for the project of $200,000. Asking for a motion to authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the grant agreement, required documentation, including performance agreement, disbursement request, and certification form. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Joyner, seconded by Councilperson Miller. Is there a need for discussion?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Blackwell?
can we just get a brief overview for the public so we can
Sure.
understand what that is?
Mr. Varney, can you provide us some color here?
The Hubble company operates in a building that's that's on English Road. It's over near where Texfi used to be, now Crown Carry is. Been there for a number of years. They are planning an expansion of their operation. I think, if I remember right, they're planning to invest a little over $8 million in their expansion, and I've forgotten the number of employees. It's something like, was it 73 employees, I believe it was, that they're planning to add. Let's see. Yeah, planning to add to the workforce 73 additional employees, additional jobs. And so what they have done is gone to the Department of Commerce, the North Carolina Department of Commerce, asking for assistance. They received assistance from the department in the form of the building reuse grant. And now what you have before you is assistance in the form of a One North Carolina grant. I believe the sum of both grants is $500,000, which will help them in the expansion of their facilities there.
Thank you, Mr. Varney. Any questions for Mr. Varney?
Thank you. Thank you for the update. I just think we need to.
Absolutely. No, I think that's
let
more than
people know-
appropriate, and I
That's
appreciate
right.
the
Good
interruption and the request.
Thank you.
All right, hearing no other discussion, I'll ask City Clerk if you'll please call the roll. If you'll vote when your name is called.
Councilmember Knight,
Yes.
Blackwell,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Daughtridge,
Yes.
Bullock,
Yes.
and Miller.
Yes.
Motion carries, which brings us to item 11 on our agenda, which is consideration of property acquisition relative to support of Fire Station Number 2, which is the renovation project, Nash County parcel number 030433, a purchase price of $3,000. Requested action is that we authorize property acquisition at the recommended price. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Walker.
Second.
Second by Councilman Knight. Is there a need for additional discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Walker.
I just want to take the time to publicly thank Councilmember Knight. It was his brilliant idea to have the fire station, to be able to expand there and being able to have property acquisition around the fire station. I was ready to move swiftly on just getting it built for constituents and allowing them to see the brand-new build-up. But it was his wisdom that led us to this point of having this acquisition. I believe constituents will be more than happy with seeing an even larger and beautiful station there, and even the fire department. So thank you, Councilman Knight, publicly.
Thank you, Councilman Walker. Is there additional?
You're welcome.
Is there additional conversation? Hearing none, I'll ask City Clerk if she'll please call the roll. If you'll please vote when your name is called.
Councilmember Knight,
Yes.
Blackwell,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Daughtridge,
Yes.
Bullock,
Yes.
and Miller.
Yes.
Motion carries, which brings us to item 12 on our agenda, which is the consideration of an agreement with Motorola for 3-year installment option for acquisition of new radios. 76 replacement radios for the fire department and energy resources. It's required for safety certification, a total cost of $394,251.36. $131,417.12 is the cost per year. And 2, fiscal year 2021 and 2022 budget ordinance amendment, which appropriates funds for replacement radios at the amount of $131,418. Request is that we approve the agreement with Motorola for radio replacement and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the same on behalf of the city and to adopt the ordinance amendment. Is there a motion? Motion made by Councilperson Miller. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Joyner. Is there a need for discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask City Clerk if you'll please call the roll. If you'll vote when your name is called.
Councilmember Knight,
Yes.
Blackwell,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Daughtridge,
Yes.
Bullock,
Yes.
and Miller.
Motion carries. Item 13 is consideration of the municipal agreement with the North Carolina Department of Transportation for design and construction of the Monk to Mill Trail project and project map, which is an estimated project cost of $2 million. 20% is the local share, and that's estimated at $400,000. This is Powell bill eligible. The request is that we approve the agreement and authorize the mayor, city clerk, and finance director to execute the same on behalf of the city. Is there a motion? Motion by Councilperson Miller, seconded by Joyner. Second by Councilman Joyner. I thought that was you, but is there a need for discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask clerk, please call the roll. If you'll vote when your name is called.
Councilmember Knight,
Yes.
Blackwell,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Daughtridge,
Yes.
Bullock,
Yes.
and Miller.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 14 on our agenda is consideration of a bid for sweeper trash screening. Award to E&M Contracting, Inc. at a total cost of $99,975 plus a 10% contingency. Requested action is that we award the bid as recommended and authorize the purchasing division to issue a purchase order and execute bid documents in accordance with the council's award. Is there a motion? Motion made by Councilman Joyner. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Walker. Is there a need for discussion?
Might want to explain a little bit about what that is. You're spending $100,000 to clean up dirt is what it amounts to. The street sweepers go across the streets and vacuum up anything that they encounter in the streets. A lot of it is dirt, but it's also leaves and debris that's found in the streets. And we deposit that at the city's compost site, which is over off Old Carriage Road, and have accumulated a fairly sizable pile of street sweepings there. And so what we need to do is clean that up. We have a permit from the North Carolina Department of Natural Resources for the operation of that site. And so what we're doing here is going to be filtering or sifting the dirt out of that, separating the trash from the dirt. The trash will go to the landfill, and the dirt will go to the city's land clearing and inert debris landfill.
Thank you, Mr. Varney. Any need for discussion or any questions for Mr. Varney?
I have a question.
Yes, Councilman Knight.
How long, is this the first contract, the E&M contract has done this? Or could you, I've read the background information, but it didn't say if this was the first time being awarded.
I don't know.
Okay, that's fine.
I
You
can find out.
get back with me later. Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll ask clerk, please call the roll if you'll vote when your name is called.
Councilmember Knight,
Yes.
Blackwell,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Daughtridge,
Yes.
Bullock,
Yes.
and Miller.
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 15 on our agenda is consideration of the Downtown Residential Production Grant Agreement with Duke's Properties and Construction LLC for the development of 8 residential apartments at 201 through 215 South Grace Street for $80,000. The requested action is that we approve the agreement and authorize the mayor to execute the same on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Councilman Knight made the motion, seconded by Councilman Joyner.
We get.
Is there a need for
Can
discussion?
we get the city man?
Yes. Mr. Varney, could you provide us a little bit more background on item 15?
The city council adopted a policy back in July, I believe it was, that provides for assistance for the production of residential units in parts of our downtown area. And what that policy does is provide assistance at the rate of $7,500 per apartment. And so, this award is made in accordance with that policy. The amount of the award for the residential production is $60,000, and that's layered on top of a $20,000 grant for from the downtown building use program.
Thank you, Mr. Varney. Is there a need for additional questions? Councilman Daughtridge, you indicated you were going to recuse yourself from this vote. What's the basis for that request?
Appearance of conflict due to a business that I used to own, did business with this developer at this particular property.
Okay. I'll ask the clerk, please call the roll. If you'll please vote when your name is called.
I have a question.
Councilman Knight.
I'm not clear. You said business you used to own, reference to Top Dog, or is this in reference to something else?
Top Dog that I no longer own as of January 1st of 2022.
Okay. January 1st, 2022.
Correct.
Was that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I thought that you had given that over a year ago, that disclaimer. We are in 2022 now, correct?
Yes, sir. He's
Yes,
just
sir.
asking to recuse himself on the basis of appearance. I'm not sure it meets the technical definition, but we'll ask our attorney if he'll give us some indication on
Well,
that.
we always talk about transparency. I was confused because Councilman Daughtridge had made a comment when he had gotten on the council that he was no longer a partnership in that business. So when he said January 2022, seemed like he had just, I guess, got out of the partnership this year.
Right.
So that's why I was seeking clarity on that.
I understand. And so just for the sake of clarity for everybody, Councilman Daughtridge is recusing himself for the appearance based on something he used to own that closed a prior month. I'm not sure it meets the technical definition of being recused. And as I'll ask our attorney if he will.
No.
If our
I'm not
attorney-
quite sure
Excuse me,
you,
Councilman
you
Knight,
don't-
please, Councilman Knight.
No, I was saying I'm not quite sure you're understanding my question. So if you don't understand my question, then the attorney cannot answer my question. My question is that the statement that was made from Councilman Elias Daughtridge when he became a council member 2 or 3 months later, that he was no longer a part of that business, and he wanted to make sure that he made that known. And then today, he said that he was recusing himself for the appearance because he's no longer had been involved since January of 2022. So I was asking the question, did he still have the involvement up until 2022 of this year, or his involvement ended 3 months after being seated as a council member?
All right. So
That's the question.
All right, so Councilman,
Thank you.
I did understand the question, and the question really before us today is, can Councilman Daughtridge recuse himself from this specific vote? And I'm going to ask our attorney if he'll give us some indication.
This is an ongoing project, and I believe it began before January 2022, and I believe Top Dog may have been involved with regard to demolition. There's quite a bit of demolition on this property. It's at the corner of Grace and Western Avenue. So I think this is something that he can and should recuse himself.
Thank you very much. So with that said, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll if you'll vote when your name is called, and if we'll recuse Councilman Daughtridge.
Councilmember Knight,
Yes.
Blackwell,
Yes.
Joyner. Walker,
Yes.
Bullock,
Yes.
and Miller.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 16 is the presentation relative to community code compliance process. I'm going to ask Will Deaton and Kelly Cook, Development Services. Please come forward, I guess.
At the last city council meeting, Councilmember Joyner asked that we explain the process of code enforcement as to how it works, what we do. And so I've asked Mr. Cook and Mr. Deaton if they would. They've got some slides, I think, ready to show that would explain the process.
Good afternoon. So as part of this presentation, initially we had come on board to discuss the minimum housing code requirements, the legal processes therein. But as a result of Councilman Joyner's question, we'll also include some information with respect to the public nuisance ordinances and how they're enforced and how we seek compliance in that area as well. And I'll preface everything that all the information I'm giving you with respect to the minimum housing code with the premise that the cities and any municipality in the state of North Carolina, their minimum housing codes are governed by chapters 160A and 160D in the general statutes. There are some parts of the minimum housing code ordinance that are left up to the municipality, but for the most part, they are governed by general statutes within the state. In the city of Rocky Mount, the minimum housing code inspections are complaint-driven, in that we take 90% of our minimum housing code inspections are done based on phone calls from tenants. Occasionally, Rocky Mount Police Department, Rocky Mount Fire Department provides us with information, and we do follow-up inspections along those lines as well. The inspections are conducted within 24 hours, or at least we make an effort to schedule the inspection within 24 hours with the reporting party at the location. When we do the inspection, when our inspectors approach the property and do the inspection, we obviously have to have permission from the tenant to gain entry into the property, and we make it known to the tenant at that point that irrespective of the complaint that got us to that property, it may be something as simple as no hot water, there may be no heat in the house, there may be a plumbing issue or something along these lines, that we don't simply take that complaint and start a housing code case based on a single complaint. Once we walk into the property, if there is a violation of the minimum housing code, we're going to document it and take pictures of it, and that becomes part of the case as well. Once the inspection is completed, notes are taken on a 16-page inspection document that we use in the field. We document this with photographs as well. All this information goes back to the office. The inspector then prepares the inspection form by entering it into our database system. Meanwhile, the administrative staff begins work on the ownership of the property. We do title searches and use the city's paralegal, county register of deeds, and any other information we can gather. This becomes extremely involved when we get into air properties or abandoned properties, because most of the time we're having to track down people. And in the case of air properties, we have to do estate work through the title search and things of this nature. I'll give you an example. We've got a housing code case that we're processing right now that has 13 heirs involved. And we've got to track down each one of those in order to provide legal service. Because once it's all said and done, and once we put the package together, we have to serve legal notice via both first class and certified mail to all parties in interest. This includes anybody that's on the title. It includes any lien holders, any banks, anybody of any concern that's on that case. Once we've obtained that legal service with all the parties in interest, we then schedule a hearing. We have to hold that hearing within 30 days of the legal service, the last legal service, and we do those hearings on a monthly basis. The result of those hearings is one of two orders. It's either an order to repair or an order to repair or demolish the property. The delineation between the two being the estimated cost of the repairs to bring that property up to a minimum standard, okay? In the city of North Carolina and the city of Rocky Mount, our current ordinance has that delineation set at 40%. In other words, if the estimated cost to bring that property up to the minimum housing code exceeds 40% of the tax value of the structure, not the land, just the structure, the house is considered dilapidated, and at some point that can be considered for demolition. Anything less than 40% is considered deteriorated. We issue an order to repair, and that's the extent of it. Any change in ownership along the way or along the process or at any point down the road, 5 years from now or next week, results in a change that we have to restart the entire case. We have to afford the same opportunity to bring a house up to code with the new owner as we did the previous owner. There is no requirement in the state of North Carolina under real estate disclosure laws for a real estate agent or any seller to disclose the fact that a house is under code to a potential buyer. Unfortunately, that happens a lot in Rocky Mount. We do have a lot of properties that change hands that are under code, and it's when those people show up at the utility office to turn on the electricity is when they find out the house is under code. When a house is placed under code, there is a flag placed on the utility account, and the electricity cannot be turned on in that house until it clears inspections. That's essentially the process with respect to the minimum housing code. Can I take any questions there?
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Yes, Councilman Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. We know you have a challenging position. Got a few questions. On the outset, you said 90% of your code enforcement investigations, I don't know what the right term would be, are generated by complaints. So is there any percentage does that mean for dwellings that are occupied or for dwellings that are unoccupied?
Those are occupied dwellings.
Those are occupied
Yes,
dwellings.
sir.
So for those dwellings that are unoccupied, that might have been burned out or set for a while or in major thoroughfares, is your process the same in those cases as it is when people are actually living in dwellings that perhaps might be unsafe or?
Certainly. With respect to the vacant properties, the legal process remains the same, obviously. The difference there being with a vacant property, we don't necessarily have right of entry into that property without cause. So if we happen upon a vacant property where there's a major structural issue, if the roof has collapsed at some point, if a wall has collapsed, or there's been a major fire, and the property is vacant, we don't necessarily have right of entry without an administrative warrant from a judicial center, which we can obtain within a day or so. Other than that, the process remains virtually the same. Obviously, occupied properties, fire properties, or catastrophic damage properties take priority, and we respond to those first.
So is there any, once, if there's a fire damaged property, for example, and it's clear, everybody can see it's damaged by fire, and it's clear who the owners are of that property, for demolition or cleanup, you know, is there any requirement that's given to people just to say, I need you to at least clear the property up or make it safe? Is there anything that you require, your office requires, or general statute requires?
There's nothing in a general statute. However, we do have the nuisance ordinance to rely on. And rather than make the situation even more challenging for the people who own that property after a fire like that, we tend to engage those folks as best we can. Typically, in the case of a fire, the fire department does reach out and make contact with the owner if they're able to, and obviously apprise them of the situation. When we come upon the property for an inspection, this is when there's a little bit of nuance in the process, because we want to be able to work with the property owner and give them an opportunity if there's an insurance claim to be made and things along these lines. So we reach out, make contact, and keep that line of communication open, because we understand that an insurance settlement could take some time. So we're not going to move for demolition tomorrow or next week or what have you. So we let that process play out. We stay in contact with those folks. They may go out and get some estimates. They may come in and apply for permits and whatnot. And we certainly hope that's the case. With those properties where we've got a mess to clean up, certainly we want, again, to engage the property owner or the responsible party. A lot of times a local property manager, if the property owner isn't local, and assist them in any way that we can, providing any resources that we can to help them get the property cleaned up. One of the most challenging aspects of that is to secure the property. A lot of times when you've got a major fire, it's virtually impossible there's not enough plywood out there to get a house boarded up and keep it closed up. But with respect to leftover debris and things like this, we do have the occasion to have to bring in the public nuisance ordinance to get the property clean.
So then, last questions, I know.
No, these are great questions, thank you.
So when our public hears or sees that they're proper, we've heard, you know, a constituent, a member of our community who cares, you know, naming a property that everybody can see. And, you know, it's been clear, you know, for a while that it's out of compliance. Could be a public safety hazard. What would be reasonable to expect that our city team is working with the property owners? What's a reasonable time to expect if we see properties that are burned out, you know, on streets in our neighborhoods? What can we do to help you? I've heard some folks say that they've been required to have to get an engineer's plan just to clean up the property for fire damage. I'm not saying that's true or not. I'm just telling you, you know, the talk. Is that true? Is it always applicable that you have to get third-party professionals involved just to do basic cleanup?
I think that Councilman Blackwell, in my tenure, nearly 8 years with the city, we've had one residential fire that took place at 257 Rose Street several years ago. That's the only residential fire that I was involved with after the fact, where we did actually request outside assistance to determine the structural stability of the dwelling. And unfortunately, that resulted in us having to demolish that structure within relatively short order. There were only 2 walls left of the house when it burned. And we were very concerned that the one wall was going to fall and possibly impact the house next door, so we had to move quickly on that. I think we're fortunate in most respects that is the only occasion in the last 8 years that I've been associated with. However, to your original point, we know of all the houses that are out there just about, for example, right now, we've got 16 fire damaged houses under code in the city. 9 of those right now have active permits on them, and there are people working on those. The other 7 are at various stages of that legal process. We've started cases, or we're still making notifications, or we're still serving, or we may have held a hearing, and there's an open order out there, still an order that hasn't expired yet. With respect to the orders, going back to the order to repair and the order to repair or demolish, the maximum allowable time under statute that I can give for that is 30 days. Or, I'm sorry, 90 days. Anything in excess of 90 days, the Community Appeals Board has to grant, and that's done through the appeal process on the part of the responsible party when they're served the original order. Any permit, any work that's being done on the property, obviously that's taken into consideration when that order is given as well.
So then it's fair to say, thank you for that. So would it be fair to say then that if you have an inventory of all fire damaged properties within the city limits, you knew the number, there's a plan for something everywhere, then it's a matter of people who are property owners adhering to that plan?
Absolutely.
And so if people don't see something happening, does that mean something is happening, we just don't know what it is?
Exactly. There could be an order out there that's within that 90-day window. We're just waiting for the 90 days to expire. And that applies to everything, whether it's a nuisance, whether it's a minimum housing code, whether it's a vehicle. Everything has a compliance period associated with it within a legal framework. So in the case of minimum housing code, we've got up to 90 days. In the case of nuisance ordinances, we give 10 days.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Yes, Councilman Joyner and then Councilperson Miller.
Yes, we hear a lot about the landlords that probably could be a nuisance to the community, that piles stuff outside the streets and constantly does that. Homes less than bringing down the appearance of the community. And I think that if we can get you to come to some of the community meetings and answer some of those questions for the community to hear as well. But for the nuisance process and for those homeowners that is constantly evicting people and piling stuff outside the street, and the home is less than appropriate for those who are homeowners who are trying to keep the value of their property up.
So a couple of answers for you. Just a little bit of information I can give to you. During my 8 years as a member of the Community Code Division, I've missed one neighborhood meeting that I was invited to attend. I will go Tuesday night, Saturday morning. It doesn't matter if it's an opportunity to present what I know to the people within the neighborhood to help them along. I'll be there for them. With respect to what we in the business, I guess, call cleanouts, there are a couple of things at play here. Obviously, Environmental Services runs their 311 system. They have the ability to determine whether or not a property has an active utility account, which in turn pays for the solid waste disposal fees on that property. If there's an issue on their end, if it's something they can't handle, if it's much more than they would anticipate handling through the weekly pickup service, they let us know. We do the research on a property. We at first obviously try to engage the property owner, the responsible party, and let them know, you've got to come out here and clean this stuff up. Otherwise, we'll issue a nuisance notice in the right-of-way. A nuisance notice in the right-of-way carries a different legal framework than a typical public nuisance, because the right-of-way allows us to immediately clean it up and we don't have to serve a written notice on it. The cost of doing so is billed by the Environmental Services Department through my office, and in turn that gets billed back to the property owner. They're held responsible for that. But we typically identify those, and with the assistance of Environmental Services, we can usually get those cleaned up within 3 or 4 days tops.
Councilwoman Miller? We do have, as you know, we
added an ordinance to the city code a couple of years ago. It's called the Non-Residential Building Maintenance Ordinance. And that specifically applies to the external appearance of the building. Doesn't deal with the habitability of, obviously, for business reasons. Doesn't deal with the use of or anything along those lines. It's simply a measure of maintaining a property, even though it may be vacant, in a standard that we're accustomed to, or what we would expect of a minimum standard. It's still a relatively new ordinance. We're still working through some of the pains of that. I think it's a little bit taxing on the housing code inspectors to take on that ordinance as well, but we're doing our best with it as much as we can right now. For the most part, I've been taking on those cases myself. So when I'm made aware of a situation, I'll deal with it.
I was thinking about some buildings downtown going way back that had been burned out, and I don't currently know the status of it. And then buildings along Church Street now that are either burned out or just collapsed. And so what is to nudge the owners of those to take care of it?
We have the same process essentially as the minimum housing code does. We do an inspection on it, albeit an external inspection. We present the findings of that inspection along with a complaint. We do hold the same hearing. We do issue the same order on it. Typically, when we move towards these are with the entire notion that we're at some point going to have to demolish the building, as we did at 1045 Leggett, 616 West Thomas Street, and 3 or 4 others that we've done in the last couple of years, where the building has come to the point where it's actually, there are some structural failures in it, and we have no choice but to demolish.
Councilman Daughtry.
Good information, and thank you. When you say 90%, 90% of what? Quantify, is that of 100 or is that of 1,000 that?
We currently have in the neighborhood of 800 open housing cases in the city, with about a 70-30 split, 70% being deteriorated, 30% being dilapidated. We are in the midst of, and we're in the second month of literally between myself and 5 inspectors reviewing each and every individual file right now. We're verifying ownership, we're looking at tax values, we're validating the inspection reports, updating photography as necessary, closing some cases. The 90% that I speak of is the 90% of that quantity as a whole.
So you answered my second question, which you have 5 staff and then plus yourself, so a total of 6 in your department. So is that, sounds like, the 800 is taking up a lot of your time. I'm getting close. What I want to ask is, and I don't know if you can answer this, is staffing. I mean, is there enough staff, not enough staff? I guess it's to a point, once you can get under control, you don't need as much staff. But what I hear when people come up, I mean, what I hear, and it might be different than what other council members hear, it's for the people who have a concern within their neighborhood, and they have their structures in their neighborhood that they're keeping up, and then there's certain neighbors who are not keeping it up, and therefore it's either causing a danger or reducing the value of the property. And how do you balance that? But I think with the city, part of what we need to do is enforce the rules. But we can't enforce the rules if we only have a limited number of people. Is that an accurate statement?
You would think it would be. However, I would suggest that the 5 inspectors that we have are all tenured. I don't have a lot. My junior inspector's been on staff almost 4 years now. So the 5 inspectors are each assigned a geographic area within the city, so they know their territory relatively well. They address complaints. Our standard within the division is any phone complaint that we get, which is several every day, obviously, is to respond to each and every one of those within 24 hours, one way or the other. When we address public nuisance ordinances versus housing code ordinances, we have to issue a notice, and we do the same thing that we do with a housing code case. We attempt to engage the responsible party. If we can't do that, we take pictures of the violation, we note the violation. Again, we send out certified first-class mail. There's a 10-day compliance period. At the end of that 10 days, we go back out and take a look and see if that violation is still there. If it is, we then assign it to one of the contractors that we have to clean up those the nuisance abatement contractors. They'll go out, and they're required to take a picture before and after, what it looked like when they got there, what it looked like when they left. And they do the work, and we get a bill for it, and that turns around and gets billed back to the property owner. So we spend obviously most of the months between April and October, November. Obviously, grass and weeds are a big issue in the city. We issue close to 3,500, 4,000 mowing orders every year in the city. We're paying contractors to mow that many during the year. We abate several hundred nuisances a year. We do in the neighborhood of 120 to 130 board ups a year where we're securing open to the public homes, things of that nature. This all comes out of one single budget line item, which typically runs, the last 3 years has averaged about $170,000 a year just to accomplish that.
So one follow-up, I'm hearing the quantity of work you have, so I want clarity on the staffing, and I also want clarity on, when you mentioned the grass and other things, that we have habitual property owners out there that we're going after every year, year after year after year. Is it something that we need to address from a city council perspective? Because it's costing the taxpayers and the citizens to upkeep other people's properties, and can't say it any more clear than that.
No staffing issues. We can take care of it with what we have and with who we have. With respect to the actual enforcement of the ordinances, once we do the billing, it essentially leaves our hands at that point. It becomes a collection issue. We do have, and we just finished, general statute in the state of North Carolina allows for and has a provision for what they call an annual notice to chronic violators. Any particular property that has received a nuisance notice, 3 of which in a single calendar year, rolling calendar year, is considered a chronic violator in the state of North Carolina. And once they achieve that status, such as it is, they are no longer afforded the opportunity to receive a legal notice in the mail. So we go out and mow those lawns 7 or 8 times a year. We have 1,100 a year, I think. And again, those are billed back just as they would, even though they fall into different classification, not just the usual and occasional notice, but they're considered a chronic violator. And that's terminology that's set forth in the statute. So that accounts for about 1,100 of the mows we do a year. So 30% of what we're mowing a year are chronic violators. But all of that, whether it's nuisance ordinance, whether it's demolition liens, whether it's grass and weed notices, all of those are considered to be liens on the property, and those are classified just like any other lien on a property.
Any other questions?
We do have a backlog of collections, money we owed for those sorts of fines, right?
Yes. Again, that's a collections issue.
Right, I understand.
Okay. All right, any additional questions? Thank you, Mr. Cook, Mr. Deaton, Mr. Varney, for bringing this, as this was for information only, and I think a lot of questions have been satisfied tonight, and I'm sure as we ponder, it will generate more. But thank you for your time today. Brings us to item 17 on our agenda, which is consideration of resolution authorizing the extension of the master services agreement with Aetna Life Insurance Company for 1 year, effective July 1, 2022, with the following main features. Administration fee, there'll be no charge. Broker compensation, no change. No change, not no charge, no change. Fee holiday to change from $58,383 to $20,000. A wellness allowance which will increase from $50,000 to $60,000. And an employee assistance program which there will be no change. Mr. Varney, would you like to add any color to this, you think, is necessary?
I don't have any color to add to it. It was on your work session the last time we met, and so what this does is is get it approved so that we can proceed with the services offered by the company.
So with that, I'm looking for a motion to adopt the
So
resolution. A motion made by Councilman Walker, second by Councilman Joyner. I'm sorry, Blackwell, I'm sorry. Okay. Not as good as I was,
Yeah.
at least tonight. So I've got a motion and a second. Is there a need for additional discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Daughtridge.
for the past 2 years, I have been questioning this, and it's not that I necessarily, I just think as stewards of this city, I would like for next year for this to be put out for bid, either through a new consultant to make sure that, because we've had the same consultant for 15-plus years, I believe. I'm not saying that we would change it, but also have concerns with, we're not recipients of the pharmacy rebates, and that concerns me. And I'm also concerned, even regardless of which way we go moving forward, we don't have a reserve fund, and that just sticks in my head. And we've had increases of healthy increases year after year because the claims are the claims are the claims. It's just the nature of what you have with self-insurance. And I think we strongly need to consider establishing a reserve fund for our health insurance, because one day we just need to be prepared, and I don't think we're prepared.
Thank you, Councilman Daughtridge. I have a motion and a second. Is there a need for additional discussion?
I have one question.
Councilman Knight?
Yes, I don't know if Mr. Varney can answer this or not, but it seems as if we, the city, with Aetna Life Insurance, they had this contract for about 2 years, 3 or 4 years?
3 years. It was extended
3.
last year, and then this extends it another year for a total of 5, I believe.
Right, so I was just wondering, same as if that we had not been bidding it out. And I know that when Aetna won the bid process, that's the only way how they could win it if we hadn't bid it out. And I know that they had been the carrier for the city of Rocky Mount for a short while. So how often do we bid that out? Is it every year, every 2 years, every 5 years?
I suppose you could bid it out every year, but for consistency and ease of administration, I would think if you could do it for a little longer than 1 year, maybe 3 years or 5 years, something like that.
Right, that's what I was thinking, because if you continue to bid it out every year, then you'll spend more time trying to, with administration and trying to get people to understand the new policies and so forth. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure. I thought maybe it seemed as if someone was thinking that we had this company for 10 or 15 years. But okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Knight. Councilman Daughtridge?
Clarification, the consultant is what we've been with for the past 15 years, I believe. And that's what I'm referring to. And if it also includes changing health insurers, then that's, everything needs to be considered.
Thank you, Councilman Daughtridge. I have a motion and I have a second. Is there any additional questions or conversation? Hearing none, I'll ask clerk, please call the roll if you will vote when your name is called.
Councilmember Knight,
Yes.
Blackwell,
Yes.
Joyner.
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Daughtridge,
Yes.
Bullock. Yes. And Miller.
Okay, motion carries. Item 18 are appointments. Does anybody have any appointments to bring before this board tonight?
Yes,
Councilman Walker.
I'd like to appoint Mr. Peter Gillian to the Tree Advisory Board. I believe he's already serving in one ward, but now he is, because of the lines and the redistricting of the wards, he's now in Ward 4. So I want to make him the Ward 4 appointee for the Tree Advisory Board.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Mayor, I think we have in our packet, the Redevelopment Commission, James Mills wishes to be reappointed. and I would suggest we do that. In addition to the MLK Commission, Nakia McGee and Vanessa Whitaker currently serve on that commission, and I believe they would like to be reappointed, and I would support those, please.
I'm sorry, now, you lost me on that last two, if you don't mind. I've got James Mills for the Redevelopment Corporation.
MLK Commission is Nakia McGee, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Vanessa Whitaker.
McGee and Whitaker. Yes, ma'am. She has something to say. All right. Anybody have any objections to any of these nominations? Then I'll look for.
I don't have an objection, but I have a question.
Councilman Knight.
Yes, and I don't know if it's a Jeb or Mr. Barney or a mayor question. When we appoint boards, members on boards and commission, and even when council are put on board and commission, which are the boards and commission that we offer or give oath to? Do it have to be a certain type of board? I'm just asking out of clarity.
Some of the boards require the council appointment, others can be ward appointments. And I think, well, I would need to look at it, but I generally believe it's up to the council. There may be some boards that the general statutes impact how they're appointed.
Right, so could you get the board that information? Because I know we're going to item number 19, which I don't have a problem with it. I never known us to do an oath for the Kemper, but not saying that we can't and that we shouldn't or we should. But I just want to know, out of clarification, which boards, as you mentioned, Attorney Rose, that we need to be administering oath to. And if we do, then we need to be consistent across the board. It shouldn't be one board is bigger than the other board, but it should be consistent across the board. And if you can get me that information, or the council, I think it would be information for us, because some of us may have forgotten. So it would be maybe a refresher or maybe new information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Knight. So do I have a motion and a second for the board appointments that have been?
So
listed?
moved.
Motion made by Councilman Joyner. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Walker. Is there a need for additional discussion? Councilman Lodge, Daughtridge?
I would like to know from Mr. Varney, are all the boards meeting again, or are they backing up and running again, or are we still in COVID stance? I know planning board is meeting, and maybe some of the boards that have to do like that, but what about the others, please?
I can't speak to all of them, but some of them are meeting in person and some are meeting by Teams or by Zoom. Is that what you're asking?
Are they all meeting, or has there been a hiatus for the last couple of years, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I can find out which ones are meeting. The ones that I have been working with are meeting. I've been working with the Workforce Housing Advisory Committee. That's one that had not been meeting. They suspended their meetings during the, I'll call it the peak of the COVID season, but resumed, about February or March, I think, in 2021, and they continue to meet. Redevelopment Commission is meeting. They had suspended, not so much because of COVID, but because of work activity. Now they have resumed meeting, and they are meeting, by Teams or by Zoom, and we're trying to get them to come and meet in person, but now we're going back to Teams and Zoom. I don't know about all the others, but if they, as far as I'm concerned, or we're concerned, if they've got work to do, they need to be meeting or can be meeting. There's nothing that we are doing to prevent them from meeting. I guess is another way to say it.
Yes, Councilwoman Miller. Can you hit the mic?
Pressing the wrong button. Aren't those boards and commissions required to submit their minutes to either the department under which they are coordinated or to the city clerk? They should be a part of our official records. And normally the minutes of an organization should say whether they're meeting in person or remotely, by what method.
Yeah, I know when I was here before, the requirement was that any board or commission would create minutes of their meetings and that those would be handed up to the city clerk, I think, for distribution to the city council. I don't know what the current practice is, but it should be the same.
Thank you. My point exactly.
All right, additional questions? We have a motion and a second. Hearing none, I'm going to ask the clerk if you'll please call the roll, if you will vote when your name is called.
Councilmember Knight,
Yes.
Blackwell,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Daughtridge,
Yes.
Bullock,
Yes.
and Miller.
Yes.
Okay, we'll now administer the oath of Nkempa to Councilman Daughtridge. Place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. And swear after me. I, Lige Daughtridge, do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, that I will faithfully and impartially execute the discharge duties of my office as Commissioner of the North Carolina Eastern Municipal Power Agency, and that I will adhere to and abide by the Electric City's ethical and professional code of conduct. So help me God. Okay, now having no other business to appear before this council, I now adjourn the meeting.